flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, I'd like to thank the Board of Education for inviting us to be here tonight. Tonight, we have some members of the 8th grade middle school choir to sing a few Christmas songs for you tonight. We just wrapped up a tour of Tiffin. In December here, we took the 3 middle school choirs out to sing and perform at 3 of the local nursing homes here in the area. It was a great experience for the students and for us, and so we're glad to be able to come here and then share some of these songs with you as well. The 3 nursing homes that we were able to visit were Autumnwood, Elmwood at the Shawn, and Kiwanis Manor. And so we're going to sing 3 of those selections for you tonight. We're going to sing Jingle Bell Rock, followed by Winter Wonderland, and then we're going to end with We Wish You Merry Christmas.
Jingle bells chime and jingle bells time.
Okay, so the eighth grade members that we have here tonight, we're starting in the back row with the person on the left, Michael. We have Michael Tucker, and then Evan Kahn, and then Vivian Robinson, Pamela Factor in the front row, Kylie Tom, and Alexandra Chris.
We're certainly pleased that you were able to come out and share those songs with us, and have a few questions for you. And the first one has to do with that last song you sang, and the figgy pudding. So, what is figgy pudding?
I think it's something. There you go. I'm pretty sure it's something that they eat in like a foreign country. Yeah, I don't know. I got told this in like third grade.
All right. So none of you have had figgy pudding? All right. So you don't know what figgy pudding is. Okay. What do you think might be in figgy pudding?
I believe figs are in figgy pudding.
Okay. Figs?
Yeah.
All right. What other types of things would be in the figgy pudding?
Well, most people think that pudding is like that sweet kind of stuff that you get like Jello or something like that. Well, I feel like it's nothing like that. I don't really know how to.
All right. So, but can you picture what figgy pudding might be?
Nope.
No. All right. So the song talks about the figgy pudding, and then they're wishing Merry Christmas to you and your kin. What's kin? Oh, right in the back again. All right. So
I'm pretty sure it's an Irish slang word.
Irish.
It's your baby.
Yeah, it's like an Irish.
It's your family.
Yeah, it's like for your son.
All right. And who do you think it is? You
Like
had
your
plenty
kids,
to say back
like
there.
your kids or your wife or something.
Your wife. Okay. Any other?
It's your family.
Your family, just collectively your family. All right, yeah, pretty good. So you've been in choir, and choir at the middle school is an elective, right? And so who would like to share with us maybe why you've decided that this is something you want to participate in? Would anyone like to share? You want to? No? You got it? All right.
Yeah. I decided that I would join choir since I'm already taking band and I want to pursue a career in music. So I decided that choir would help me achieve my goal for a music career.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, great.
I decided to do choir because it's a nice like pickup during the day. Like if I'm feeling down, I go to choir, and then I'm happy again because we sing really fun songs.
You sing a lot of fun songs. Tell me, what would be one of the fun songs that you've learned over, not just this year, but over the last, what was fun song? Oh, she's got one. Okay.
Africa by Toto.
Okay. Africa by Toto. Would you like to I don't know if I've heard that. Do you want to sing it? No? Not today? All right. How about you? Anybody else want to respond to a fun song that cheers you up? Like the tornado fight song or something?
Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Okay. So you've sang Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles, which was written early 1960s, all right. And in that song, who were they referring to when they said, "Here comes the sun"?
No idea.
No idea? All right. Anybody want to comment on that? Who are they referring to? The king. Right. Right. So here comes the sun, because they wanted. Anyhow, it's look that up, because there's a lot of history in that song by the Beatles. Here comes the sun. Yeah. So anyhow, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ridge, Mrs. Ridge, for the accompanying us. We appreciate that. Enjoy your Christmas vacation. Of course, you have a full week this week. Got some final exams coming up, so we probably need to get you back and get studying, don't we? All right, then that's what we'll do right now. Thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Ridge. If we could call the roll.
Dr. Gase.
Here.
Mr. Henry.
Here.
Dr. Hoyda. Here. Mr. Perez. Here. Mr. Widman.
Here. Next, we will adopt the agenda. Before we get into that, I want to officially apologize for missing our special board meeting. All about it. Knew it was happening and did not remember to go. So I apologize for wasting valuable time for a lot of people because we were not able to take action because I was not there, and I apologize for that. With that, we need to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved. Second.
I do have one correction.
Yes.
One correction on page 8. Organizational meeting will be January 8th, 2019. That should be at 6 p.m. at the administration building.
Okay. All right, so we're, correction on the time of the organizational meeting, still January 8th, but at 6 p.m. There's also, officially, we need to identify an addendum for tonight's meeting, which would be item 9.15, approve elimination of pay to participate for the 2019-2020 school year. That was distributed at everybody's places. If anybody in the gallery needs a copy, we have those provided too, or we can provide you with one. So that was the additions with the addendum and the corrections. We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Dr. Gase.
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda.
Yes.
Mr. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Widman.
Yes. Next, moving into board reports, Mr. Perez, Business Advisory.
I believe we meet tomorrow morning, so
Finance Committee, Dr. Gase.
Finance Committee did not meet.
Communications Marketing Committee, Dr. Hoyt.
We did meet, we discussed the district, the profile in great detail, made some corrections and additions and suggestions. That was pretty much the extent of the meeting.
Very good. Any questions? Program Committee, Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Woodman. The Program Committee met on December 12th. We discussed the Columbian Curriculum Guide and the Tiffin Middle School Curriculum Guide. There were extensive changes to both of those, mostly in nomenclature, the elimination of intro courses, and those curriculum guides go through a cleanup process every year, and this one was a little longer than usual, but I believe that the administration of both schools hit everything, and I'm appreciative to them and to the committee for fly-specking those guides. We also spoke about replacing the Zulama program, the course that's currently in our system, with a new program, Innovations in Science Technology, which will result in a credential for those students completing the program. The program's going to be a 2-class period block for the entire year. And we talked about that quite a bit. I think Mr. Barber may be talking about that later on, so I'm not going to go into great detail about that. We also had discussion about a recommendation from our administration at the K-1 building to move the kindergarten screening from May to August. The consensus of the folks that deal with kindergarten screening have agreed that that's a more appropriate time to do the kindergarten screening. The hope also is that the screening can be conducted at the K-1 building, which will have the added benefit of introducing parents who have never been in our system and are enrolling their children for the first time to that building. I believe that the discussion was that it was not necessarily board action needed on that, but we wanted to introduce that at a board meeting. Parents who are planning on enrolling their children in kindergarten will be receiving information through the mail, through our website, and in the usual means about that change. We also had some discussion about possibility of changes to our language in our board policy regarding the administration of medication. Denise Floor, who is our nurse, communicated to us some concern she had about inconsistencies in the policy, how that's being administered from building to building, particularly for students that are bringing non-prescription medications into school. There will be more discussion on that later. The last item that we talked about, and we started talking about this approximately 4 months ago, was a transition of parent members on the program committee. I had indicated we had discussion last month, and I basically polled the committee to see if anybody knew how this had been done in the past. No one knew. I did research board policy, which is a little confusing, quite honestly. We're going to talk about that tonight. But in any event, I think it's time to begin a process where we transition some of our parent members off of the committee that have been on for a long period of time and move some new individuals onto that committee. I'd indicated at the last meeting and again tonight, and ran these names by the program committee. I'd like to nominate Mariah Solomon and Dr. Megan McBride Klein to that committee for the 2019 year. Our committees by policy are supposed to change every year. I'm certain since I've been on the board that hasn't happened. I don't know if that's just a matter of past practice, but I think it's time, particularly with program, because we deal with some fairly weighty issues, that we consider that. Claire Forrest, I spoke with. He'd indicated he had been on the committee for approximately 10 years. And I want to thank him publicly for his service on that committee, whether he continues to serve or not. He's been a valuable member of that committee for the time that I've been on. Our next meeting will be January 16 at 5:15 p.m. on the first floor of the administration building.
Any questions? Support services did not meet. Personnel committee did not meet, nor did the records committee. Legislative liaison report. Victor?
In lame duck, there has been a lot of action actually, and currently I believe House Bill 58, which requires cursive education up I think until 3rd or 5th grade, passed the House and the Senate, and I believe that's waiting to be turned over to the governor, and that would start I believe a few months after it's implemented. So I'm not sure if the superintendent has heard about that, and because I believe we actually do teach cursive or handwriting in our district already. The other one is House Bill 343. That's the one that changes the valuation challenge process. It's been amended in the Senate from school boards can challenge to any legislative body, but it apparently looks like it may have stalled in the Senate committee, but it may be back next year. So that's all I have to report on the legislative committee.
Any questions? Vanguard Sentinel will be meeting on Thursday of this week. Wellness committee, Dean?
The Wellness Committee met in a sort of an unusual session to discuss possible changes to our medical insurance program, all presumably good changes that are being proposed by the management group known as NFP. I'm not going to go into details on those at this point. There's another meeting scheduled, excuse me, on February 21 of 2019 at 3:30. Any board members or members of the faculty that are interested in discussions on this, more than welcome to attend.
Any questions? Pre-K task force, Andy?
Pre-K task force did meet on December 12th, and we met with representatives of Garmin Miller, specifically Wayne Coleman and his architects Matt and Sarah. And we mostly reviewed the footprint of the proposed high school and the space allocations. And we also looked at the specifics of required space utilization for the pre-K the kindergarten, pre-K kindergarten or proposed kindergarten K-5 building. Mostly looking at what the difference between what our needs are and what the state would allow. And so we could sort of get an idea roughly of what kind of costs above and beyond what the state would allow. And the importance there is that we're looking at the specific dollar figure that whereby if we need to go for a bond issue to pay for it completely, with the expectations that because we're so far down the list on state funding for school facilities, we might have an option of spending our money up front, building a building, and then being reimbursed later. Now, according to Wayne Coleman, the test case is about to occur the end of this year, beginning of January in West Carrollton. And based on that, we'll have a better idea then on whether that's, I forget the term he used, but help me out if you guys know that, whereby will be able to be considered for that. Now, it turns out that I think they're taking about 10 a year, 10, 11 a year, I think you said. And if you're past 31 or 32, I think, and you're not would be considered in the next 3 years, then you might be a candidate for this option. The bottom line is we would not lose any money. We would lock in at our rate, which is a good thing. And I'm not sure how, as far as interest rates and all that goes, I'm not sure if that becomes an issue or if it helps us or hurts us. I really couldn't tell you because I don't know how the interest rates are going to go. But nonetheless, we could still get a project on board and planned and up and running, even if we didn't qualify within the next 3 years. Did I get that right, or is there
Yeah,
something else?
I think the big advantage is you're beating inflation and you're locking our rate in. So you're getting one of the buildings built with the entire local share, if you take a look at it that way. And then the second building will pretty much be state funded from that perspective. So instead of splitting that local share between two buildings, you're looking at putting the local share on the first building, and then when we fall in line for the state reimbursement, which they believe now could be as long as 5 or 6 years, then we would receive that funding then.
Yeah, I think the dilemma is that unfortunately we're close enough that we can't get through what they call the priority to leapfrog over people, but we're far back enough that we can't get that help now. And that was the issue, is whether we can be in a position, because they said probably not the sectioning, what they were talking originally, but bonding out the bigger part of our project so that our local LFIs actually get covered by the state at that point. So.
Sounds like a pretty interesting opportunity to continue pursuing.
Yeah, I think we'll really know next month. And because of that, Wayne proposed having a meeting January 21st or 28th, I think. Was it right? Or 24th to 31st.
It was, I think, the last
Yeah,
Thursday.
the last Thursday or the second last Thursday.
Yeah, because he's
24th.
hoping to hear from the new administration on the state what their new rules are going to be and see if they're going to make any changes.
Very good. Any additional comments or questions? All right, student representatives. Kirsten?
Okay, so NHS just collected cans for the Salvation Army. I'm not, Andrew, do you remember how many we collected?
No, each member was required to bring in 12 cans. So.
And we have 54, 55 juniors, so that's quite a few cans. And then book club is reading A Room of One's Own this month, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Andrew?
Well, I think Mr. Kopp just informed us that it was around 100 cans that were collected. 1,000, sorry. All right. So in my short report for December, since it seems like it was just last week, we had a board meeting. Columbian's wrestling team this weekend went 5-5 at Fricker's Duels in Defiance. It was a Friday and Saturday tournament, and we will compete again in Brecksville at the Brecksville Duels December 8th and 9th. Columbian's boys swim team is 2-3-1, and the girls team is now 2-4. They have their senior night on December 27th at the Tiffin YMCA, so come out and support them. The Columbian girls basketball team is 4-1, and their next home game is Wednesday, December 26th. The high school boys team beat Fostoria on Friday night, 73-68, and they will play home again on the 29th against Genoa High School. And just a good luck to all students, middle school and high schoolers, as exams begin tomorrow.
Very good. Any questions?
Andrew had a good day on Saturday.
Mm.
He's 5-0.
Good job, Andrew.
I would say that the team, it's been a good season so far, so the team's definitely come together, and it'll be interesting how the year plays out. So
How'd you do on Friday?
I went 4-1, got
4-1.
beat by a kid by Oregon Clay, so
Mm.
there's always room for improvement for everybody.
You get it. Superintendent's report.
I'm going to lead, I have two short items, but I'm going to lead off with David Zach and give him some time to talk about the TIF that we will be considering today. And that way he'll give him a forum to be able to answer any questions that the board may have regarding that area.
David, thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, it's truly my pleasure, and happy to be here. I think the song that the students did such a great job singing is kind of a quick way to summarize why we're here. I love the first line. Actually, the original poem going back to 1835 was, "We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and a pocket full of money and a cellar of beer." So I think that's the kind of song I can get behind. But that being said, I think there are kind of three messages in that song that I think are appropriate tonight, and I'll kind of frame my comments around them. And thank you for that performance. It kind of, I love the holiday spirit. The first is we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I think it's fun to be in a community where we're all connected together, where we're all get to have a hand in making this a better place for the kids, a better place for the adults, trying to improve quality of life. And, this is my adopted home, and all of you on the board are volunteering your time. All of you in the faculty and the staff, new and old, have been doing this a long time. This is a labor of love, and so I love what the district's doing. I'm a fan. It was fun to go down to the School Board Association conference and talk about the Year 13 program and the little things that we can do to help the huge mission of educating the next generation, on and on and on. So thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm also, the next line is, good tidings we bring to you and your kin. So a couple good tidings. One, I wanted to make sure to recognize Mayor Mons is here and Bryce Riggs, who worked on this project a long time. One of the functions of tonight is to make sure we can answer more questions. So I'm just doing my best to try to have as many resources here to make sure you have the information you need to make the best educated decision that you believe is in the interest of the district. And appreciate your consideration of all the dialogue that we've been having on an ongoing basis. So the good tidings, going about a year and a half ago, was the possibility of locating a Trilogy healthcare facility into the community, about a $14.5 million project, 100 new jobs, look great. I give a lot of credit to Bryce Riggs and Matt Watson in the engineer's office, and Dale Thornton as well, who was really running the day-to-day traps on that and trying to figure out a way to make it work. And the biggest challenge was infrastructure. So the good tidings were really the opportunity to work on this. They needed 2 points of entry into the development. One, which took a while to do, was with ODOT on the south side. Another one was potentially Schaefer Park, didn't look good. So we started looking at Market Street. And at the same time, Bryce had also been working with the mall owners and the folks over there. They had gotten a new firm out of Toledo, Anchor, to market it. That's also good tidings, right? Something going to happen. When I came in, there were two things I asked about when I took this job. Was one, what happened with the courthouse? Because I read all the papers going back 2 years. And the other was, I'd done my internet research, and it said, deadmalls.com is where the Tiffin Mall came up. And so I was like, well, what is kind of happening with the mall? And so the idea that a few years ago someone bought it and it's going to have new life was kind of exciting. So those are really good tidings. And what was really cool is both projects could kind of combine it. We could do a road all the way, and as Bryce will tell you, there was a lot of negotiation with Reineke and Aldi on that. At the end of the day, needed to fund it. City didn't have the fund. You all know the city went to the voters just to try to be competitive with other communities and keeping up the public infrastructure that they already have. And so the idea was that there was a mechanism potentially to do it, which gets to the third part of the song. please bring us some figgy pudding. So, it's all well and good to wish people good tidings, but, proofs come to you got a dinner, right? So you got to have some kind of partnership. So the figgy pudding in this case is money to pay for the infrastructure in order to have the holiday cheer. It was about a $4 million price tag. There was water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, and other infrastructure as well. And some of that was paid by the landowner, some of that was paid by the company. So put together this deal, all the mathematicians and the bond council and those folks came up with an idea that, okay, let's redirect some of the new property taxes to pay for that road. How much are we going to need to pay for the bonds? I think it ends up being a little over $6 million. Going over this ground again, I don't want to cover the ground too much, but not everybody's been at every meeting. And so the idea is that we've asked Hopewell Loudon School District and Tiffin City School District for a parcel by parcel TIF where the school board has the opportunity at each interval to evaluate and decide what they want to do. 30 years for 90% with 10% going to the school districts. So the intention is what we've tried to do, effectively or not effectively, is to communicate our intention. Our intention is to make good stuff happen for the community. That's our intention. That's the intention of the city. And what we've tried to do at the Tiffin Seneca Economic Partnership is do the best job that we can in providing information for the school districts about the projects as they are happening, the theory and the approach that we're trying to take, and the actions that we hope will get us there. So with that, I want to make myself available to questions, and thank you for considering it. Thank you for the partnership on behalf of the city and on behalf of us for everything you've already done to date, and just want to try to make sure that you have all the information you need to make the best decision that you would like to make.
Very good. Do we have some questions?
David, how much is Hopewell giving up over the 30 years for the TIF?
90%.
Dollar amount.
Okay, I don't have that. I asked for questions in advance, so I mean I can try to pull it up for you and maybe bring it up a little bit later. So I don't have that dollar figure in my head. That's why I was hoping to get the questions in advance so I can make sure to bring the facts. But I can get it for you tonight,
Yeah, I think he
Dr.
asked that at the
Hoyda.
last meeting before he left. So, because I think that was one of the issues. Most of this project is in Hopewell Loudon. The only thing we're really getting off is that tie off at Schaefer, but apparently the rest of the mall development from now into perpetuity is going to pay for something that's in Hopewell Loudon. So.
The mall is in Tiffin City, is it not?
Improvements that we're funding. The road and the under infrastructure all is south of us.
So so Dr. Hoyda made the comment asking for how much money. I'm going to try to locate that. Okay, yeah, and so I'm going to see if I can get that for you. I'm going to try to get. And Mr. Prez, was there a question? I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm answering it because it kind of went really rapid fire. So I want to make sure I'm listening and giving you appropriate attention.
Is you mentioned the 10%, so you've negotiated a payment in lieu of taxes at this point for our district, correct? The 10%, that would be, instead of the 100%, we're agreeing to do 10%?
So
that would go back to us in Sentinel.
that is the approach that was developed to pay for the road that was shared with the districts, yes.
And was it negotiated with anyone from our district? Or is that just a number you guys came up with?
So we did the best job that I thought. I think we did a good job. We didn't do a perfect job of communicating that. There was a briefing that we provided that had 90% for 30 years. I think one could legally argue it didn't specify, it maybe didn't have the degree of specificity that one maybe would have wanted, and maybe we could have done that a little bit differently. I think our intention all along was that what it was, was that. So, you know, I know we've had ongoing dialogue. Not everybody's been at every meeting, and, you know, it goes back to memory. The intention has been, was the approach that was developed, and to the best ability that we have had, or, you know, did the best we could to try to communicate that. Maybe it wasn't communicated as effectively as it could have been, but that's been the intention. Did I answer your question, Mr. Press?
In the future, on any future request, could they be handled that we get the 45-day notice, negotiate an agreement, and just do it in a timely manner? Would that be acceptable in terms of moving this project forward? Because I anticipate you're coming back with more parcels in the future.
Sure. Our intention from coming back, I think last year in the summer was to be timely. I think the request for a waiver of the notification was because the new bond counsel who was advising the city, when I've done tax exemption agreements, we've accepted exchange of information via email as acceptable. They advised at the end we should, have a kind of a higher level. So certainly anything that the board would consider, Mr. Perez, to be timely, we would want to do. We have intended to be timely and in advance. If our actions didn't communicate that, I apologize.
I think you did a fine job communicating with us. The problem is this, it's complicated. It is really
Understood.
complicated. Kirsten, if I can use you as an object lesson, just turned to me and said, what does TIF mean? Which is exactly where I was before our very first meeting. Had never heard of it, had never read the statute. The statute is like wading through mire. I mean, it's about as clear as mud, and I read statutes for a living.
Yeah.
From my standpoint, it's 1/5 of a board. Two things. First of all, I was surprised at the amount of money we're forgiving, and there's no real way to know that up front. In defense of you and the city, you can't really know what you're giving up until you know what the value of the property is going to be after the improvement. So you can ballpark it, but you just can't know. And when you're doing this parcel by parcel, then there's a cumulative effect of the amount of funds that are being foregone, because it's not forgiven. It's just a delay in receipt. And then you move into that, the 10% equation, which actually for us, it comes out to be closer to 13 or 14% for the pilot. And then you consider the 30-year time frame, which might be longer than some of these projects are actually alive, but not longer than what it takes to pay off the bond, which you always have to think about, just like the building we're sitting in right now. This building could collapse, on top of us, but we would still have a debt that we would have to service for the years ahead. And all of that is just a lot to take in when you're dealing parcel by parcel. So I don't know that there's a blame to be laid here or anybody to throw under the bus, but it is just complex. The other difficult part for me is not knowing ahead. Dealing with these parcel by parcel is fine, but there was discussion about a commitment on our part as a district to do this for every parcel. And that was a bit of a surprise to me because I was involved in the discussions on finance. And although I understood we were going to consider this parcel by parcel, and I was fine with that, and I understand that's not normally the way it's done, but since that is the way that was elected to be done, we're dealing with this piecemeal as opposed to in a district. I'm okay with that. We're dealing with the idea that because we're dealing with this in parcels, we're going to have to add up in our head the amount of money and the length of time, all of which begs the question of, can we continue to do that? Is it sustainable for the district to continue to forego those funds when our only revenue source, unlike other municipalities and governmental entities, where our only revenue source outside of our state funding, our foundation funding, is tax revenue from real estate property taxes that, of course, are always based on valuation. So I'm in this position where I want to be pro-business. I want to be on David Zach's side. I certainly want to work with Mayor Montz, and already have, by the way, and people like Bryce. And on the other hand, I have to ask myself, how much money am I giving away in tax revenue? At the same time, I'm going to the folks that fund this school district directly through real estate taxes and asking them for more money to fix this building, build another building, buy school buses, and so on. That's the dilemma for me. I appreciate your efforts in communicating that to us. I decided after going through all of my notes, and Sharon Perry did a great job of getting all of the data to the board regarding what we had committed to, that this particular resolution that's coming up tonight, I'm going to vote in favor of. In the future, I'm going to have to be more, I guess, in my own head, have a greater precise knowledge of what we're giving up before I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to seriously consider encouraging an adjustment to either the length of time that we're going to forego those funds, the percentage of funds we're going to forego, or maybe an adjustment to the pilot. And quite honestly, I haven't figured any of that out yet because I'm still trying to get all of this in my head in a manner that I can understand it in a linear way.
So a question, and I apologize for not giving the question ahead of time, but as Dean spoke there, this came to my mind. As you develop the infrastructure that is needed for not only Trilogy, but with this car wash at this point in time, once the infrastructure is there, it's ready to serve not only those entities, but other entities that are coming in. So there's potential of, once we make this initial investment of the infrastructure, down the road when more companies or proprietary individuals decide to improve or to make dollar investments in our community, there may not be a need for a TIF because the work's already been done. Do I have that kind of understanding? That that's a potential? That down the road we won't need to do a TIF for another parcel because the road's already been completed and paid for?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
But
Potential.
And the more development, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I think to be fair, you indicated that the problem is that the Trilogy project is really, really expensive. And to pay back the bonds they need to forecast potential revenue for the mall. It's really paying back the Trilogy. It's not building development at the mall. I mean, the car wash is in Georgia. It's internationally owned. We linked it through that interchange. It's not really...
The Trilogy project, when you say the Trilogy project, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the Progress Parkway, the road between Market Street and 224? Okay, so I'm making sure I listen correctly.
And we've already approved that TIF. And that had very little to do with Tiffin City Schools. We had a very small percentage of that. That was mostly Hopewell Loudon.
The actual Trilogy facility was all Hopewell Loudon. There was an Aldi expansion, yes. So the district has already participated, yes, and we're thankful for that.
I just have one question, David.
Sure.
These projects oftentimes are done clandestinely. You have to keep things quiet. And at what point is it acceptable to make public knowledge? I mean, how far into this negotiations? Because ultimately, if it comes to it's got to be public knowledge if it comes to us.
Correct.
So when is that possible? I mean, because if you're keeping everything on the hush, and then you come to us early maybe it ruins your deal, right?
Sometimes that is the case,
It puts information out there
so
that's not ready for prime time.
Absolutely. And so, our intention is to work with the board in the way the board wants to be worked with. So taking some of Board Member Perez's comments and other comments, I think we leave this, whatever happens with the vote, working on a process. I can tell you that the standard way we've done it, from which we're going to look to deviate and improve, I think, to improve the process, is we give our projects code names. I think we have initially had discussions with the administrator and the treasurer, in the district when you're looking for tax exemption. Sometimes that project code name is kept. It depends on the nature of the relationship with the company. We talk about it in general terms, industry, dollar value, what kind of general investments. And so typically we know when it comes to a public meeting where there's something going to get approved, we typically tell the companies that if you're going for some type of, or you're involved with some type of exemption, it becomes public at that point. Mm-hmm. We typically work with the company to work on a release because And that's most of the time. So usually when it comes to a public meeting, to get some type of tax exemption, it would be public at that point. It has happened, and happens on occasion, with the Tiffin City Council, who's been great to work with. Sometimes you have multiple readings. They have been okay with general knowledge of the project, so as long as for first reading, second reading committees, we've done things where we've gone through where it's been particularly sensitive. But by the time everybody is voting, it's public, for sure. So it's usually in concert with that, and we try to balance that. And we try to work with the legislative entities, the public entities, to balance that with the needs of the company. And usually we're pretty successful in that regard to try to balance that. But we usually tell companies if there's going to be some type of public support that has to get voted on in a public meeting, generally speaking, then yeah, it's public at that point.
Well, in the other thing that I learned in the Finance Committee meeting is that in the last 20, 30 years, well, we have 15, 20 maybe agreements with the city and development amongst different industries in town and around the area. So this is nothing new, of course. So if we're not here to change the method or change how you do things, and I think that's all we're asking for is the information. And I choose to look at it as a standpoint of this is part of a team, right? I mean,
Yep.
Yeah, we need figgy pudding, definitely. But we also need a thriving industry base, and we need people with jobs and real estate values to rise and all that. So that's our interest too. So I look at it from the standpoint of we're going to need you guys' help down the road with 2 new buildings coming up, and we might need infrastructure change ourselves. So I think we're looking forward to meeting the needs of the community hand in hand with
I know as long as I've been a board member, we've had great partnerships with the school and the community at large, not just the city of Tiffin, but Clinton Township and the other areas that we service. And as Andy mentioned, this isn't something that was created yesterday. This is a way of being able to develop strong communities. And so a strong community has a strong city, has strong industry, has strong people, and then for you to recruit people to come to town, they're asking you, how are your schools? And so
Absolutely.
The community needs our strong schools to keep moving forward too. So there's a lot that we benefit from each other. There's a lot we can do for each other. And so I think I certainly believe going forward we will continue that relationship of working together. And Andy kind of mentioned, and you were here for our task force meetings and for our pre-K 5 meeting. There's a lot of things that are going to happen, and we need to work together, not against each other. So I certainly, for one, am ready to move forward and work with you on this. So I appreciate you being here tonight to answer some of these questions for us.
Thank you. I certainly feel the strong partnership, and I think in the interest of, figgy pudding, it's got figs and suet and flour, and it's boiled. It takes a while to Board Member Henry's point and to Board Member Perez's point, it takes a little time to digest. So I think we'll work to make sure to get more information earlier and keep this relationship going so it's easier to digest.
Okay, very good.
Well,
Thank you for your
I
time.
think we can't lose the fact that 30 years, 100% is the exception to the rule. Statutorily, it's the exception. And we appear to be adopting it as just a matter of course in our district. So I think that's the bigger issue, not that we're working to get along with people, it's just that whether or not we're being taken advantage of at some point. The other thing is 30 years is long. I don't think many of us are going to be on this board in 30 years, may not even be around in 30 years, so we have to think of how we're hamstringing this district, probably in a generation down the road. Now, I'm going to probably vote to approve this tonight, but what I would ask the president to do is in the future probably set up a committee and negotiating team from our board that can meet with them so that we have negotiated agreements on anything that can be presented to the board so that we could work together and not have something like this happen again.
Well, we almost have a mechanism to make that happen through Finance Committee. And, when the Finance Committee comes out, when there's going to be discussion over this, I mean, obviously since it's announced, all board members can attend.
Right.
So just one comment. I appreciate the sincerity of the concern in protecting the district and not opening Pandora's box and setting precedent. The one thing I would like to add to the discussion that, we think about that a lot, and I just want to make sure you're aware. So there have been a number of exemptions I've worked on since I've been here, my team's worked on, where we talked to the schools ahead of time, but it did not require school board approval. So it was the two community reinvestment areas, which were 50%. For 10 years. That was just for the Chipotle, the diverse development, as well as the Tim Hortons development. So we kept it as low as we thought possible. And the city could have done more without school board approval, but the intention was to keep it as low as possible. And the other one that comes to mind is Webster Industries. So that was a 75% for 10 years, and that can go higher. So I don't think it negates your point in any way, shape, or form of making sure that there's good negotiation facilities in place and that the board is comfortable, but I just wanted to make sure to let you know that I share your concern and to let you know that we are working hard with the city to try to preserve as many, because so that may mean, but anyway, I just wanted to let you know a couple of examples where I think we're demonstrating that we're, at least to the best extent we can, keeping that in mind.
David, a lot of these projects have taken place over the years. Do you have data on what long-term benefit it's been to real estate values and thus our source of income? Do you have any information like that in an area where a TIF has occurred and you've improved a property, and then 10, 15 years down after the TIF is maybe finished, what valuation is and what kind of return we're then getting? As in, like, our investment, basically. We're giving up something to get something down the road. Is there data on that?
So I'm sure there is,
Yeah,
because
I would
TIFs.
imagine.
So I think
But
that'll be a
convincing,
takeaway from this. I can work on that on behalf of the administration and the board, and work on getting that information to you.
Thank you.
All of this is, and I hate to put it in these terms, but particularly what you do, David, there's a lot of speculation, and I use that term in a business sense, not in a pejorative sense, as to these types of projects. The hope is that when you fund the infrastructure, which is very expensive, that business will follow. And that's the hope. That's what everybody keeps their fingers crossed about. The reality is that doesn't always occur, and sometimes it doesn't occur for a whole lot of reasons that have nothing to do with what good people initiated. Sometimes it's market conditions, sometimes it's geography, sometimes
Yeah.
There's a whole variety of reasons. So in a sense, we gamble with taxpayer dollars a little bit when we do this. And again, I hate to use that term gamble, but that's exactly what it is. We're essentially putting forth an ante in the hope that that ante will generate a pot of figgy pudding at the end of the day in the form of business, the generation of business. In the process of doing that, we are also getting signals from the legislature, not only in the form of what they think they're going to do, but for example, in this last legislative session, where they're chipping away at the school district's ability to not only generate revenue through property taxes, but to challenge valuations. We've just encountered that legislation this year. And so somebody like me who's thinking 30 years down the road, and I have no intention of being on this board in 30 years, but I want to be able to look people in the eye 20 years from now and say I did the best I could. We're in an environment that's not particularly conducive to giving school districts control over their own finances. We are, I think Sharon would back me up on this, we are at the mercy of the legislature for a great deal of not only what we get from the legislature, but also what we get locally. And I think that that environment colors my thinking a little bit and makes me just a little more wary and cautious.
I think other public entities here locally feel the same.
Yes.
About those kinds of issues, John.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
That as our district, I was looking at our checks we write tonight, $1.2 million per month payroll. So when you look at those numbers and then you look at what we're trying to accumulate and what we're trying to do with the monies we have, recognizing that we're giving away an opportunity away to raise more, it worries me a little bit. And Mr. Perez is correct, 30 years is a long time, and it's generally a long time to find a legal entity, a board entity like this. If we try to enter into a contract for 30 years, we would be having some real concerns about, you know, who we're binding in the future and what we're giving up. So that's the environment we're in.
So I've tried, Dr. Hoyda, to do a quick calculation on my calculator using the assumption of $14.5 million times the 35% assessment rate times, I used 50 mils, which to you know, be conservative, because I don't know off my head what the rate is. Multiplied by 0.9, that is about $228,000. So, you know, a year in terms of what they're contributing to the project. So if, you know, that would be a guesstimate is what I would say every year. And then multiplied by, you know, 30 years, it's in the neighborhood of 7.61 million. That's a guesstimate, sir. I can try to get something, but just to give you does that work, Dr. Hoyda? Okay, great.
And
Yep,
we're
my
at
pleasure.
175,000 now before this resolution. Am I correct about that?
No, I think that was the
Including-
amount including this,
Including
yes.
this, okay. So we're at 170. So your figure's probably pretty close.
I think it's important too for everybody just to consider, you know, that education obviously is a foundation to this community, and having a community that works together with their education system. But, you know, then again, 30 years at, you know, 100% with the 10% reimbursement, you know, that's quite a chunk of change that, you know, in 30 years when maybe I come back to Tiffin from college and want to sit on the school board, that, you know, that's quite a lot of money that we're going to, you know, as you use, Mr. Henry, gamble. You know, are we really going to see a big investment? And I think that it's kind of a big challenge to the city of Tiffin that, you know, you guys have taken the risk to give, you know, it sounds like what's going to be 90%, and that we, you know, in the future, that revenue is going to need to come back, because without education in our community, you know, the community cannot strive and achieve to higher standards. So.
Good point. Any other discussion?
I'm going to defer.
David, thank
No?
you.
You'll defer? All right. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Please stay for the figgy pudding is later in the agenda.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
I'm going to forego the rest of my discussion.
Thank you. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. I have just two very brief items in front of you. You'll see the updated and proposed curriculum guides for Tiffin Middle School and for Columbian High School. Mr. Henry alluded to these earlier in his report. Those are for your first read. They were presented at the November and December program committee meetings with the revisions and changes. So those are for your reading enjoyment over the holidays here. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
I have a couple questions about
I-
the curriculum guides, if you don't mind. Under mathematics, are you eliminating geometry in the high school, or is it only available honors geometry or no introductory geometry to non-honor students? It's page 26. Intro there will be, but it says honors after that. Oh. And so it says honors after that, so what does that mean? Okay, and then for 7th grade, the electives at the middle school, it's my understanding that art class fills up really quick and that there's a great interest in that class. That's just something I'd like you guys to look into.
Very good. Thank you.
And then I had a question. Why is the pre-AP title being removed from the honors classes in the high school, or in the middle school as well? I'm on page 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe? I
It's
think.
the unnumbered first
Yeah.
4 pages in
pages,
from the
yeah.
beginning on the high school curriculum guide.
Mm.
Because of AP, the language in AP, if we keep the title of pre-AP, it causes us to have to do some different things with regards to like legality with the college board, and so it's semantics. Okay. So we're just simply removing that title.
Yeah, okay. Just curious. Thank you.
We actually had some changes that were made, again, to my surprise, because of NCAA requirements, which I never thought about, but that's why we have great staff that thinks about these things and then makes the changes. So some of the changes don't make a lot of sense from a from a worldview, but they're important for technical reasons.
All right, very good. Scotty?
Just one quick minute. I'd like to thank the staff and the board members for donating $1,476 to buy hams through Smith Frosted Foods. That went really well. We delivered the hams today, able to help out families with the Salvation Army. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the opportunity for the public to address the board. So if there's anybody here that would like to comment today, please come to the podium, give your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Carissa Allen, 135 Clinton Avenue. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, everyone. Just wanted to say that, I was really proud of what Washington did. Nobody gave a shout out to them, but they did a canned food drive. They did stockings for soldiers and various other projects to help out the community. I think it's important to talk about community as we're talking about the TIF and getting a lot of information that's very helpful as a taxpayer on multiple levels here. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the great job that they're doing and to keep it up, and to thank the board for their service this year, and that I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board this evening? We will move into our consent agenda. Item 8.01 is to approve the minutes from the November board meetings. 8.02 is to approve the treasurer's report. 8.03 is employment, and 8.04 are donations. 8.05 is the statement of purpose budget report, specifically for wrestling. 8.06 is to approve the payment of stipends. Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Henry,
Second.
second by Perez. Roll call?
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes. Next on our agenda is our action items. Item 9.01 is to take a motion from the table to approve compensation agreement with the city of Tiffin for infrastructure improvements.
So moved.
Motion by Henry,
Second.
second by Perez. Roll call?
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes. Okay, so we're taking off our table, and we have a motion on the floor that's, the motion was by Henry, the second was by Gase. And so is there any further discussion as it relates to the infrastructure? Roll call?
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.03 is a memorandum of understanding, teacher coverage.
So moved.
Motion by Henry. Second by Perez. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.04 is to approve the North Central Ohio ESC Foundation contract fall update.
So moved.
Motion by Henry. Second by Perez. Discussion? Roll call?
Yes, we said it was 180,000 more than last year, and the reasons were we are contributing with the ESC on the sharing of our social worker, where we're contributing 60,000 to our grant and academic affairs. Amy Wood was 60,000, and then we have Tim Weber's entire salary this year through the ESC, which we didn't the first half of the year last year. So it should be stable. The only thing that could have some fluctuation would be the preschool, depending on the numbers.
Roll call?
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.05 is to approve agreement with Richland New Hope Industries.
So moved.
Motion by Henry, second by Perez. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.06 is to approve a proposal from Naviance.
So moved.
Motion by Henry. Second by Perez. Discussion.
Just to add, talked to a couple of the high school counselors about this, and it sounds like it would alleviate a lot of duties that they have, and it would allow them to do a lot more with guidance and things like that. So I think that it's going to be a great program to be implemented in the high school.
Very good. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.07 is to approve revised board policies, exhibits, and regulations.
So moved.
Motion by Henry.
Second.
Second by Perez. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.08 is to approve the annual OSBA membership and subscriptions.
So moved.
Motion by Henry.
Second.
Second by Perez. Discussion.
That was the same amount as, it went up from last year, correct?
I think it's a $55 increase for the year.
Very small.
Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.09 is to approve overnight wrestling trips.
So moved.
Motion by Perez.
Second.
Second by Henry. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Mr. Widman?
Yes. Clarify that. I think Perez made that motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I reverse that? Okay. I'll
Nine-
correct that.
9.1 is to adopt a resolution providing compensation of its members.
I'm going to move for purposes of discussion only.
Motion by Henry,
Second.
second by Gase. Discussion.
I'm not voting for this.
All right. Any other discussion?
My position is on the record. I said I wouldn't approve this if we have the fees, and that's the next agenda item. So I would ask that we vote for these out of order then.
It's already a motion on the table. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
No.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
No.
Mr. Widman?
Yes. 9.11 is to approve Mental Health and Recovery Services Board Amendment Number 1.
So moved.
Motion by Henry. Second by Hoyda. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes. Organizational meeting set for Tuesday, January 8th, 2019 at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Motion by Henry,
Second.
second by Gase. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes. Need to select a president pro tem. Asking for nominations.
I nominate Dr. Gase.
Have a nomination of Dr. Gase. Any further nominations? We will close the nominations. Ask for roll call vote.
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes, we'll need to have a vice president pro tem. Seeking nominations.
I'll nominate Mr. Widman.
Any other nominations? Nominations are closed. Roll call?
Dr. Gase?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Widman?
Yes. Our addendum, 9.15 is to approve elimination of pay to participate for the 1920 school year. Need a motion?
I make that motion.
Motion by Perez,
Second.
second by Hoyda. Discussion?
I think from discussing with quite a few of the public members about this, that it's more the fact that they're not looking for a removal of this pay to play, but rather a decrease. It's been seen that in other school districts, I believe that it's been about $100 compared to the $150 from what we're at. I believe that was in one or two of the local districts. But then again, back to the discussion about this was, I know, we talked about maybe eliminating school fees, and that's also been one of the things that, I don't think a lot of the community members have 100% of a big deal paying with, because they know that it's just kind of what they've planned to do. It's part of just paying the rent and things like that. But as to this, I don't know if most people really want 100% of removal, but just maybe a decrease in value.
I would also like to say that some of the pay-to-play fees are also on things that I don't necessarily agree should be pay-to-play, like choristers, which is a show choir group, which really has nothing to do with sports. It's dancing and singing, and we also get no money to buy our own music, and buying the rights to music to perform is expensive, and and I have to pay for my own dress too, and cheer. You have pay to play, and then you also have a $300 uniform and warm up. I don't think it's that expensive now, but it used to be. It's just a lot of money, and especially thinking about kids who have multiple people in families, you have pay to play, and you have as many kids paying for uniforms and other things. It's kind of hard to pay that, especially when someone like me wants to save money for college, but my parents have to pay for my pay to play, and that's $275 every year for my sister and I, and that money could be going to college.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when this was established, it was for all extracurricular activities, and the whole name pay to play is kind of misleading. It was just to fund the extracurricular
The
activities.
term is pay to participate.
And I believe it's when there's a supplemental, I think when it was implemented, when there's a supplemental either advisor or coach attached to it, then the fee was implemented.
That's exactly what it was. It was implemented when there was a stipend for the advisor or the coach.
I also think, if I may be heard, President, that it was implemented at a time that we had a financial emergency in this district. And I've heard several members say that we're no longer in a financial emergency. Basically, it was used as leverage to get us to pass the emergency levy and then the other levies afterwards, a levy that's been renewed. And so I've had people asking, first of all, the levy was renewed, but the fees remained. Okay, so why is it still there? And then the other question is, well, let me back up here to answer one of your questions here. To go over this, Clyde Green Springs does charge $100 per student. Fostoria charges $0. Norwalk charges $150 capped at $150, $75 per family per sport. Sandusky, who we beat in football this year, charges $0, and they have a bigger enrollment than us. Seneca East, local schools, does not charge. Fremont does not charge. Findlay does not charge. Hopewell, our rival out to the west, I believe, charges $15 per student, or I believe it's $30 for other sports, or yeah, for high school, and $15 for middle school, but they do not charge for band, choir, or other things. And so that we're consistent, we charge more than Upper Arlington. And I think most of us are familiar with Upper Arlington, and so that people know, Tiffin has a median income of $41,000. I don't believe Upper Arlington is close to that in the same property value as us. So if we want to become a destination district, that's what we're competing with there, people that charge zero. I have several comments from people on Facebook. One was an Annie Holman. She said to tell you guys this. Explain to the board to tone it down and allow monthly payments for the participation fees. Maybe reconsider a better discount for families with 2 or more student activities. Some parents can't afford, especially at the beginning of the school year, fall sports, to pay for sports uniforms, accessories, school supplies, school clothes, and participation fees all at once. For 6 years straight, we did this for our daughters. When you have 4 daughters, nothing is cheap, but have seen the cost of cheerleading uniforms, flag squad uniforms, band fees, one in tennis, another in cross country. 2 of those years bring the max of $300 because of the 2 girls who were in high school at the same time. Fall was always a rough time financially to get the kids back to school already and afford everything that came with it. It would have been nice to have some relief and to pay for things, I guess on a payment basis, something we don't even do. I also had a comment from someone that said, hey, we spent that money on Lincoln School that was supposed to increase on enrollment and create savings. Where are the savings? And so why aren't we seeing that in terms of these fees? And there was a previous comment in terms of, at the previous discussions, why don't we just get rid of the academic fees and book fees? These athletes and other persons, because it doesn't just include that, also paying book fees. There's this misunderstanding that because they're athletes, they're not academic, they're not buying books or something, that they're a separate class of student. No, it's part of their full curriculum. And so they're paying it too, except they're paying twice to represent our school district and what we do, and at times provide us the entertainment. The strange thing with, which is what Ms. Egbert pointed out, is we charge it also for choir, for band, cheerleading, and for, I believe it's for academic bowl, correct, too, or quiz bowl? That could charge as well? Do you
Yes,
have
it's
it
for
by-
quiz
yeah.
bowl too.
So it's academic activities as well, so it's not just athletes. The strange thing is we charge for band, which is a graded class. So in essence, we're charging tuition at a public school for children to take a class and get graded on. I thought this was a public school. So previously I asked if there were any exemptions. One district did have the exemption, I believe it, I can't remember, it was one of the, might have been Norwalk, that had, if you were on free lunch, you didn't pay the fee. We don't even have that as a policy, and since I brought this up, we don't even have that as a policy. We started a scholarship plan. These fees punish the children. They don't really, I mean, they could be targeted parents all we want, but that's why we have property tax. If we go back in time, 20 years, 30 years ago, ask the alumni from the school, how many of them paid to play on their sports? I'm going to tell you probably all of them say 0. They were able to take advantage of that situation, and I think it's right to expect that they offer that same opportunity to the future generations because they were able to do that. And so I would ask again that we approve this trial basis. If things go south, the superintendent can bring it back, but at least for next school year to go to just eliminate these fees. We just did renew the levy, and I think that would be good faith of the voters to do that.
I have a question quickly, sorry. I did, this year, I was told that the pay-to-play goes on your fees for school. Is that correct? Yeah, so I know that if you have fees on your transcript, like fees, you can't send a transcript. I couldn't send a college application for 3 months at the beginning of the school year because of my pay-to-play, because we couldn't afford to pay it for a while. And you also cannot graduate with a fee on your transcript.
Does the pay to participate resolution also include the course fees for academic courses?
No.
So we're going to keep those in place.
Correct.
The proposal is to keep those in place, but to eliminate the athletic and extracurricular pay to participate.
Correct. Those students will all still pay the academic fees. Their parents will still pay the book fees, those book costs that we get I think it's twice a year, correct?
Okay, so given the logic of your last comment, we are going to continue to charge for example, a course fee for AP English Language and Composition of $40, but the proposal was to eliminate pay to participate fees for non-academic participation.
No, those are academic as well. That's what I put it as. The quiz bowls for the thing, band is a class.
Dean is saying that we're going to still charge a fee to take this class. I forget which class it was, Dean.
I just picked one out of the program, out of the
Right,
Yes,
so we're
there's-
still gonna charge students to take academic classes, yet not charge them to take extracurricular.
No, you're going to charge them all to take academic classes. Athletes take classes too. Band people take classes too. Choir people take classes too. They still pay for their books. They still pay for honors exams. They still pay for AP exams. The extracurricular is the part that we're going to eliminate because we provide that as part of their general, education. That's why.
I'm just not following the logic of, okay, I'll pick on football. The football player who takes the AP English Language and Composition class is, under this proposal, if this resolution's adopted, won't have to pay anything to play football, but will have to pay $40 to take an AP English Language and Composition course.
Right, and if we got rid of the football program, they would still have to pay that class, and I had to pay those classes. We pay those in kindergarten. If you want to get rid of the book fees, that's what they are, book fees, and academic lab fees. That's a separate issue, but but one doesn't pay for the other. So that's not why these fees were implemented, because we were charging, I guess if we take your logic to its conclusion, since we're charging them a fee, then we can charge athletes a fee, then we should just start charging other fees because we've charged fees in the past for anything.
I'm not arguing.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out the logic of, I agree with you that people, taxpayers, pay taxes, and children come to school to get educated and engage in co-curricular and extracurricular activities, and I'm good with all that. Certainly, our football and wrestling program and our track program and our choristers are funded with taxpayer money. I'm okay with that. I'm trying to figure out the logic of eliminating fees for areas that are not academic and keeping the fees for areas that are academic when both of those are funded by taxpayer dollars. I'm just not getting the logic of the elimination of one versus the elimination of the other.
I think, to be fair, I made the motion for the participation fees. Dr. Hoyt mentioned the academic fees. There's been no motion to eliminate the academic fees. If you want to amend the motion to eliminate those as well, that would be fine.
Well, I have two thoughts on this. The first one is anybody here clear down to the dollar? what the
$75,000
fiscal
per year is what we've had two estimates now
Okay.
for athletics. For extracurricular activities, yes.
Can I ask where the pay-to-play money goes?
Yeah, it supports the extracurricular activity. So if there's busing, the supplemental contracts.
Okay.
those particular pieces.
So if like choristers or like choir or band doesn't, like choristers I know doesn't use busing or anything like that, and I'm not sure if.
But they have a paid advisor, so.
Yes,
So that's where it came, the pay to participate
but does that cover?
identified anybody who has a supplemental contract,
Yeah,
so.
but why doesn't that cover the money then to buy the music that we're performing? If it can pay for busing and other things like that. I just see that there's like an unfairness when it comes to the pay to play and like what it covers.
Kirsten, let me give you some numbers. The general
Okay.
fund, the board's operating fund, pays about $409,000 per year for all extracurricular expenses.
Okay,
I mean, that's not all of the extracurricular expenses, but we contribute that much for the personnel costs for extracurriculars. Pay to participate collects about $78,000.
okay.
So that's 19% of the total cost of extracurricular personnel,
Okay,
if that
And
gives you
that-
a perspective.
And that includes anybody with a supplemental contract. So a
Yes.
coach, a choir director.
Advisor, director, yes.
okay.
Okay, so again, applying the same logic, thank you. You and Andrew always seem to get to the heart of this. Applying the same logic, where the proposal was to eliminate athletic pay to participate.
No, it's participation fees, extracurricular.
Okay, the non-academic, let me just say that,
Band
or
is academic, you get a
All right.
grade for it. If you're going to argue and say extracurricular or non-academic,
No,
we can speak to the new Lieutenant Governor of Ohio, Mr. Husted, who has pointed out that extracurricular activities are academic.
I don't
It should be
mean,
encouraged.
I don't mean to demean the,
I'd like to call to question.
All right, the question's been called, roll call.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda,
No.
Dr. Gase,
No.
Mr. Henry,
no.
Mr. Whitman,
No. All right, Next is the opportunity for the public to dialogue with the board. Today's topic is board committees. The board has been given the committee policy. Has that been provided to anybody here besides board members? Okay. So without your having the policy, is there anybody who would like to come and talk about board committees or have a question about board committees? And as we approach the next calendar year, when the committees will be appointed and chairs appointed, and have a discussion on committees.
I have a question about sort of ad hoc or subcommittees. I had a conversation with our school nurse, Denise Fleur, after the last program committee meeting. And given the length of time it took us to solve the head lice policy, I thought maybe it might be wise for us to have an ad hoc subcommittee, maybe a group of 3 or 4, to come up with a plan so that we don't spend, hours and hours, because it won't get, because it's so gray, there will be no correct policy. There will be no best policy. There'll just be a policy. There'll be pros and cons. There'll be lots of pros and lots of cons, and mostly cons with any policy, because everybody knows once you make a policy, then you got to follow it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't follow it, then you're next in the news because you didn't follow the policy. Not because you did something wrong, but because you didn't follow your own policy. So I worry about policies.
So you, go ahead, Dean.
They're, based on my, long tenure of 2 years on the sport, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason, as I can discern, as to how certain matters get to a particular committee. I know how they get to finance committee, but for example, program committee has been kind of the, and I don't anybody take offense to this term, it's become the garbage can committee of the board committees, because it seems like everything that is not finance or not busing, for example, starts a program committee, which has resulted in some 2- and 3-hour meetings for us on issues. And I think we need to think about that as far as how matters get referred.
Yeah.
And while I'm on the subject of referring, action item 9.15 tonight, I believe should have started in a committee. I truly believe these kinds of things need to start in a committee where we can dissect the financial and logistical implications of them before they come to the board. And I don't mean any disrespect to you, Mr. Perez, because you've talked about this now for 6 months. Well, I get that, but I think that in my experience on finance committee, for example, is that you can dig deep on these items, and then by the time they're presented to the board, you know exactly, you can answer the questions, and you know where you're going, and you can, the board members that don't participate in that committee, when they're asked a question, they'll get it either from Sharon or from the chair of the committee. I think that's also been true with program committee, with particular initiatives. When you discuss those for 2 or 3 meetings in program committee, and particularly when you have input from students and parents and people outside of the district, some of the best comments lately in program committee have come from parents, one of whom hasn't even been on the committee for very long, isn't even a member now. Mariah Solomon had some just wonderful questions to ask that really helped us dig deep. Our student representatives here have consistently been doing that, and I think that helps. So we need a referral process. We probably need to shake out program, and Section C will be Wellness Committee, which has sort of gone away, has lost its sort of vision after we lost the teacher in this district that was spearheading that. We need to talk about what we're going to do with that committee, and we should probably be refocusing.
Yeah.
Mr. Barber and I have talked about refocusing that a little bit as well.
So if I can, I don't understand why policies go to program committee. That the board's responsibility is to set policy, hire superintendent, hire treasurer. So to me, in anywhere else I've ever been, There's 2 board members, there's the treasurer, there's the superintendent, there's the human resource department, and then there's anybody else who that policy would involve. So if it was a special education, you'd have Merrill Hill there. If it was medication, you'd have the school nurse there. If it dealt with staff, you might have somebody from TEA there, from that perspective. But I don't believe we, like for instance, the next big policy item is going to be bed bugs. Okay, our staff doesn't like bugs. Well, you know what? Kids are going to have bugs. Okay, we're not going to send kids home every time they have bugs. So that'll be the next item that I'm sure will come through common concerns. Okay, that we allow kids in school with bed bugs. Well, guess what? Okay, every school district's got bed bugs. So
One of the things, and one of the other reasons why it's a timely, and maybe it's a little too late in the process, but the way we handle committees is unique to us. And the way other school districts handle committees is unique to them. So there isn't necessarily a template where all districts have this set number of committees. And one of the things that I asked Gary to do as he entered his tenure with us is to let's take a real good look at how we structure our committees. And then as we prepared for the 2018 committee season, or the committee year, we just hadn't had enough time to really identify the changes that needed to be made. And at this point in time, Dean, you made a real good point that you're starting to make it, it's pretty clear that the program is probably too vast. Too many things come to the program committee. One of the things is that I just wanted to point out the pre-K 5 task force wasn't a committee. So the board identifies committees, and as the board president, I identified a task force to handle a specific topic that had a beginning and a definite end. And so that really isn't a committee, that's just a task force of trying to work on some different things. But as we enter 2019 and the committee year, maybe we're not quite ready to appoint committees, or we're not quite ready to make changes in the structure. I don't know.
I would just like to consider how often some of the committees meet from that perspective. I'm not so sure that every committee needs to meet monthly. And I think that perhaps the chairs of each committee should consider, exactly how much of a tax that is on our volunteer members.
Mm-hmm. And maybe as we begin to look at 2019, we have a president pro tem who may have some ideas of committee structures, and maybe we do make some minor adjustments. We just to see what will happen, and so not necessarily throw this structure aside, but take what we have and make some educated tweaks of okay, we haven't necessarily researched a lot about how we wanted to change, but let's try a few things in 2019 and take it from there, and maybe be able to have a better plan moving into 2020. So that might be something for us to take a look at. So lots of options.
Members of the committee, and if we follow the policy that we actually have in place, none of our committees are legally formed, and so I think we actually have to outline what they are. Our policies are clear. We can make committees from our own membership. It doesn't create the ability to appoint non-members. I didn't write it. That's the way we've been doing it for years.
It says you can have non-members.
No, it doesn't. Read it. And so the issue at this point is, I've been on this for a year now. We have committees, nobody knows why. We have, as we point out, the program committee, which oversees policy, which is really the purview of the board. And we have people that have been on there, non-elected board members for years, exercising more authority than elected board members. These are people that I thank for their comments, but actually have more vote, more sway, when even under our own rules, they're not supposed to vote. The only voting members are the board members. The president sits as the ex officio member of every board, along with the superintendent, which means they don't vote either. And so we need to clarify who can make members of these committees, and I think it should come down to the chairs of the individual boards or the committees. So if you have a program and Dean's the
But
chair,
that's not the way it's set up.
then we should
Victor.
revise. No, and I'm
Okay.
going by what's written in policy.
Right,
You're
and
going
that's
by
not the way it's
practice.
set up. I don't know what copy you got, but that's not the copy
That is the one I
got.
got from the superintendent.
Well,
Unless
he
there's a-
shared the same copy with me, and that's not what my copy says.
I read it.
So
and
you need to reread it, Victor.
No, I think
'cause
we'll
you didn't read
litigate it.
very
We'll
well.
find out whether it says,
So, I mean, we're talking about trying to improve things, and all you need to do, anyhow, I'm not gonna go there. Any other dialogue?
Yes. I think that our policy needs retweaked. I don't know that we need a whole new policy, and I think we can do this as we go. There's nothing that says that everything that we do on committee has to be done in January. That's our organizational meeting, but we can adjust things throughout the year. I've been on program for 2 years now. I don't think we've ever taken a vote on anything. There's been great collaboration. There's been sometimes spirited debate. I think everybody operates with very good will.
Absolutely.
But I agree with Mr. Perez. The policy is vague, and it doesn't sound like it says what we're doing now. In other words, if you look at how we're doing things now, and you were to look at just the black and white of our 3 main board policies on committee, they don't handshake. So we either need to fix the process or fix the policy, but I think we have to do it just in the spirit of making things function well. And right now, we've got some committees that are bogged down, and we've got some committees that don't really have a purpose anymore. So I think we need to investigate that through the year. And that's not
Right.
anybody's fault. It just sort of evolved into that. We definitely need some new blood on some
Well, things evolve.
They do.
And the committee structure of 10 years ago might not be the appropriate committee structure of today or tomorrow. So, and what we develop for tomorrow might not be what we need in 10 years or 30 years when the TIF expires.
One last thing, I would like to see more student involvement on program committee. Was it you, Dr. Diaz, that made the comment to me about that, I think? That, where were the kids? Where
Right,
was
right,
the-
well,
yeah.
and that ties in with the length of the meetings. And,
Yes, it
you know,
does.
Students being
Yes,
busy,
yeah.
they're not going to be able to have the time, not that we do either, but, Andrew, for God's sake, you guys all over town. I was at a party Saturday night, and I'm coming out, and there's Andrew at the entrance to the bar. I was like, driving
wasn't
people home.
inside. He was
No,
not
wasn't
inside.
He was driving people home. I'm like,
He was at the entrance.
Yes.
Our last
Yeah.
program committee was an hour,
yeah.
and really, that's what we should shoot for.
Agreed.
Because the reason the students aren't on a program is everyone was afraid of program because
Yeah.
it used to go 3 hours.
Right. Well,
So-
that's why I suggested, we probably, when we bring things to program, there should be something fleshed out ahead of time. If we're gonna ask for a policy measure, it should have been fleshed out by a subcommittee or, maybe the administration along with whomever is bringing the policy, should have had some, debate already, made, so that it comes with a clear cut. Yes, we're looking for your approval for this. Do you have any input? No, yes, this is what we're thinking, boom.
And I think we're getting there with program.
Oh, it is
I do. I
much
think we're getting there.
improved than what it was
Because
when I was first.
Oh, yeah,
I guess from my perspective, when I'm bringing something to program,
Right.
I'm not really looking for blessing.
Well,
I'm looking for the
Previous
fact, that look at it,
administration did
yeah,
not
look at
do
it
a
from
good
a
job.
360-degree perspective. I mean, I'm not gonna let program dictate, how I'm gonna make decisions in the district from a perspective of, we're gonna do what's right. We've got a plan, and we're gonna stick to that plan. I think the rationale behind program committee is to look at this from a 360-degree perspective. What do parents think? What do teachers think? What does the board think? And shoot holes in ideas from that perspective.
Right.
which is what that has evolved into. When I was first on program committee, we would be getting proposals that had never been vetted
Right.
by administrative staff.
Right.
And that was incredibly frustrating.
It was frustrating,
It-
very
yeah.
frustrating.
We're not doing that anymore. And that evolution has occurred as a result of new administration and a deeper dive into those things. So it's gotten much better.
Speaking of more student involvement at the programming committee, I was thinking maybe we could, Andrew and I could talk to Ms. Boyer to see if we could get student council members to be a part of the boards. I think that would be really helpful, especially, I mean, since they're elected by their student body to actually, you know, be involved in their school. And sometimes I feel like we are involved in our school, but there's always so much more that we can do. So I think if we talk to Ms. Boyer, we could see if we could get at least the presidents or vice presidents or a representative to come to the meetings.
You know, and it wouldn't even necessarily be every meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
If you had a group of.
And we have enough to have
attendees.
like a revolving
Right.
amount.
Because we're not looking for the same opinion, we're looking for different
Different, yeah.
opinions. Yeah.
And maybe we could even make it like a duty, so like all, student council
Mhm.
members.
Very good. Moving on. Board discussion. Any board discussion this evening?
I'd just like to wish everybody happy holiday.
You're discussing
Merry
that?
Christmas.
All right. Very good. Our next meeting is January the 8th at 6 p.m. And that's going to be in the administration building conference room. And if things stay the same as far as meeting schedule, regular board meeting schedule, potentially the next regular school board meeting would be January the 22nd. That would be back here at the middle school. But that's what we have today. We do need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Henry. Second by Hoyda. Roll call.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Dr. Hoyda? Yes. Dr. Gase?
He
Mr.
had to take-
Perez?
Yes.
And Mr. Whitman?
Yes. So our meeting is concluded. Have a great evening. Thank you.